שלום לכל התלמידים והתלמידות, מורים וצופים יקרים. כיף שאתם איתנו במשדר החגיגי הזה של אקדמיה ברשת לכבוד שבוע החלל הישראלי 2024, ביוזמת סוכנות החלל הישראלית במשרד החדשנות, המדע והטכנולוגיה ובשיתוף משרד החינוך. אני בר חיון, אני שמח להזמין היום את ריד ווייזמן, האסטרונאוט שעתיד לפקד על משימת ארטמיס 2. תוכנית ארטמיס, למי שלא מכיר, היא תוכנית של סוכנות החלל האמריקאית, בשיתוף עוד סוכנויות חלל נוספות, כולל שלנו אגב, לשגר בני אדם לירח כבר ב-2025. זו תוכנית שבעצם המטרה שלה היא ממש לבסס מושבה מתפקדת על הירח, שבעתיד תשמש כתחנת מעבר עבור שיגורים לחלל העמוק, מאדים למשל. לכן למעשה אנחנו הולכים לפגוש היום אדם שהולך לעשות היסטוריה. So now I want to say greetings to astronaut Reid Wiseman. Hi. I first want to thank you, Reid, for your time on this special event for the Israel Space Week. Thank you so much for joining us, speaking to students of all ages across the country.
Oh, you're quite welcome. It's an honor for me to get to join you from Houston. I wish I was there live in person.
So you're in Houston. That's where you're speaking to us from?
I'm at the home of the NASA astronaut corps here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. We currently have, I think it's 43 active astronauts right around the offices here.
Amazing. We would love to learn from you about your life as an astronaut and particularly on your part as the commander of the Artemis 2 mission to the moon. Please tell us about why NASA is going back to the moon and what will be your part in the Artemis mission.
Why we are going back to the moon is simple. I think we're going because we're humans. Artemis looks a lot different than Apollo, which we did in the 1960s and 70s. For us, Artemis is a global initiative to send humans to the moon and then on to Mars. We want to go to the moon first to learn how to live a sustainable presence on and around the moon with the Gateway, which is a space station around the moon. And we'll also have a habitat on the surface of the moon to conduct research. But I think at the core of every human is just that dream of exploration. You never go on a hike not to see a beautiful vista. You sit on the beach and you look out at the ocean and wonder what is out there. And I think as humans, as we explore out into the solar system, you just wonder what is around the next corner and the things you discover when you make these big, bold journeys. And when you do it as a global initiative, like we are doing in Artemis, what we will find at the other end will be spectacular.
Can you tell us about your personal experience as an astronaut in the past, in the present?
I guess I would want to start all the way back with, I grew up on the East Coast of the United States of America, went to college, I studied engineering, I joined the United States Navy. And I need to at least tip my hat to that because I flew as a Navy pilot for 12 years off of aircraft carriers. And in that experience, I circled the planet 5 times on an aircraft carrier. I went twice to the east, twice to the west, and I went once down around South America. And that really exposed me to the different cultures of our world. It exposed me to some of the horrors of the world, but also so much of the beauty, so much of the richness of people. I took a lot away from that experience. In 2009, I was very fortunate to get selected as one of 9 American astronauts, and we were joined by 2 Canadians and 3 Japanese astronauts to form the 20th astronaut corps class at NASA. So from 2009 till 2014, I trained. I learned how to speak a foreign language. We all had to learn Russian, learned how to use the robotic arm, learned how to do spacewalking, learned everything that I could about the International Space Station, the research that we're doing up there. And at the end of that, I was assigned to my first mission. So 2014, May of 2014, I launched on board a Russian Soyuz. There's a good picture of me crammed into that little tiny spacecraft. I flew with German Alex Gerst, Russian Maxim Sarayev, and myself, and we headed up to the International Space Station. That ride from Earth into space, it's pretty indescribable. It's only 9 minutes long. And at the end of that 9 minutes, you're doing 17,000 miles an hour, 28,000 kilometers per hour, and you're in orbit above the Earth, 400 kilometers above the Earth. And that view that you get is really quite spectacular. It only took us about 6 hours to rendezvous and dock to the International Space Station. And then once we're there, for me, it was 6 months. There's Alex Gerst, my crewmate, just a great guy. I've been lifelong friends with him since we flew. 6 months in the space station, it is magnificent. Basically, I break that experience up into 3 phases every day. We are conducting research on our own bodies to see how the human exists in microgravity. We're conducting research for researchers on the ground. We're also working and maintaining that space station so that it's viable for the future. And really, when it comes down to it, those are our 3 main functions up there: research on ourselves, research for scientists, and keeping that space station flying. But the thing that you always, as a human, you always connect the most with is just the view outside. And I know I started with that beautiful Earth background, but there's never a minute when you look outside at our beautiful planet and you don't just grab that camera and take a picture. It doesn't matter whether you're looking down at a hurricane, at the ocean, a sandstorm, our Earth is incredibly beautiful. And then the other thing that is fascinating when you're in space is that you're living in a microgravity environment. So you're floating the entire time, and it makes easy things very hard and it makes hard things very easy. But it is a wild experience for 6 months to be floating the entire time. People often ask, like, what did I miss the most in space? You miss your family for sure, you miss food, but I actually missed just sitting down. At the end of a day, you just sit down and you relax, or you lay in bed, or you sit on a couch. And we never had that for the 6 months I was up on the International Space Station. So when you come home at the end of a long day and sit down, that was the thing that I most missed, that ability to just decompress. But that time in space was truly miraculous for me. I learned so much about myself, about our planet, and about the science mission that we were doing on the International Space Station. I was proud to be part of it. It's been up there for 24 years now. So if you're younger than 24 on planet Earth, your entire life, people have been living off of our planet. And I think that ties right into the Artemis mission of, it really does matter to just go farther out into our solar system, to get people comfortable going out to the moon. It used to be foreign to get on to think about being in Europe and visiting America. You would take a ship, or it was impossible. And now you just get on an airplane and you go across the Atlantic and you're there. And I just hope in 50 or 100 years, the thought of going to the moon is like that. You don't even think twice about it. It's like, yeah, of course I'm going to the moon this afternoon. I'll be back tomorrow. That sort of mentality. I really want that for humanity, to just go farther and explore deeper.
That's amazing. If we could live to that time, could you tell us about your part as the commander of the Artemis II mission, about the Artemis II mission in general, and particularly on your part as the commander of it?
I would be happy to. So let me talk about Artemis II briefly, and then I'll touch on my role, I think, or at least what I believe my role to be on the mission. So Artemis II is the first time that humans will fly on the Orion spacecraft. We launched the Orion spacecraft on a space launch system a year and a half ago. It went out to the moon, it was uncrewed, and it performed almost flawlessly. And now it is time to put humans on this vehicle and fly us out around the moon and bring us back. So the Artemis II mission profile is actually pretty unique. We will launch out of the Kennedy Space Center in Florida on the old historic shuttle pads. We'll be off of pad 39B, and we will head up on our very first orbit off of that launch pad. We'll go out to 1,200 nautical miles from Earth. We'll do one orbit of Earth, and if the system is looking really good, our upper stage will fire, and we'll go out to a 38,000 mile orbit of Earth. It will take an entire day at that apogee to go around the Earth once. And the whole point of that orbit is to do a deep checkout of all of our systems, and we'll also do a bunch of manual flying of the Orion to check out all the manual control systems. If everything is looking good after that orbit, we'll fire our European service module, which is built in Bremen, Germany, and that will push us out to the moon. And it'll be a 4-day mission out to the moon. We won't even orbit the moon. We'll just go around the far side of the moon and a 4-day journey back to Earth. We'll test out all of our communication systems, radiation sheltering. We'll do a little bit of science just because we're out there, a lot of lunar observations, and 4 days back. So about a nine-day mission overall. One of the most unique parts of this mission will be this second orbit of Earth, this 38,000 mile orbit that we are going to do. No human has done that orbit before. We're doing it strictly to check out our vehicle systems. And so we'll be up there with this spectacular view of the entire planet Earth, which is something I've just dreamt of that my whole life. The opportunity to get to see that would be incredible.
Any chance for Earthrise?
When we come around the far side of the moon, there will be a chance for Earthrise, and we will actually be further away from the moon than the Apollo astronauts were that went into low lunar orbit. So in my head, I dream of this image of not a full Earth and a full moon, but of a crescent Earth, a crescent moon, just highlighted by our star that we are orbiting around, to give us that feeling of just the depth of space. If we can snap that picture, Christina, Victor, Jeremy, and I talk about it all the time. We would love to get that opportunity just to see a full picture of the moon with the Earth in the background. Would really, I think that gets our imagination going. For my specific role on the mission as the commander, I have to be honest, I'm flying with three of the finest astronauts I've ever met. Victor Glover, who has spent 6 months in space and flew on a SpaceX Dragon. Christina Cook, who spent 328 days in one shot on the International Space Station, has 6 spacewalks to her name. And then Jeremy Hansen, a Canadian astronaut, he and I were selected together back in 2009, and he is one of the most skilled team performers, team builders that I have ever met. There's a good picture of our crew. So really my job and any given day is to support these other 3 astronauts so that they can succeed at their job, to just, to build our team, to bond, and then to make sure everyone has a fulfilling mission, because these 3 people, they don't need a leader. They're all leaders on their own. So I love this crew. We are great friends. We are excellent communicators, and we are really mission focused.
Yes, it's. I remember Victor Glover was in Israel last year and the last space week, and I think at that time he didn't know, or we didn't know he was going to Artemis 2, and it seems that you both and the other 2 astronauts are really going to make history with this mission. How is it going? How does it feel to make this kind of history?
For me, I'll speak very honestly. It really touches me deeply when we go out in the public and we talk, and to see the connection that people have with Christina and Victor individually is amazing. And for people to see Christina, to see Victor, to have Jeremy out there as a Canadian, it matters far more to people than I thought. That this is Artemis, we are going for all and by all, and to be a part of this crew, I try not to dwell on it because we have a mission to go do, and I really focus on the mission. But when you take a step back, there is an enormous gravity to this crew, and we want to make the world proud of the mission that we are going to do, and I think we will achieve that.
I would like now to return to the children and take a few questions. Okay, question number 1.
היי, אני אריאל. תוכל לספר על הפעם הראשונה בחלל, ובמיוחד על ההליכה הראשונה בחלל?
I will translate that for you. Tell us about your first experience in space, and especially, if you can, on your first EVA.
My very first experience in space was when I first got to orbit in the Soyuz spacecraft. But I think a more relatable story will be about 10 hours after that. So we have launched from Kazakhstan, and we have now docked to the International Space Station. And Alex, Max, and I have come through the hatch, and I have seen just this enormous space station. And I've gone to bed, and I wake up in the middle of the night, and I had to go to the bathroom. And I was in space, and so I came out of my little tiny bedroom, and I didn't know how to float very well at all. So I was staying right along the floor. So I was floating like 6 inches off the floor, and I was in the middle of the US laboratory, and I just burst out laughing. Because here I am, I was just floating right off the floor, almost hovering there, going super slow. And all of a sudden it all clicked, like, I'm in space. This is a lifelong dream, a professional achievement. And I just started laughing like a little kid because it was blowing my mind. And then the second half of that question was first spacewalk. My first spacewalk was about 4 months into my mission. So now I wasn't laughing at floating anymore. I understood how to live off of planet Earth. But Alex Gerst and I were both rookies, and we were heading out on our first spacewalk together. and I was going to be the first one out the hatch. And I remember opening up that hatch into the vacuum of space. The first thing in my brain was that I should be cold because it was just black looking down at the earth, but I wasn't cold at all. So that was just the very first impression I had. And then as I looked out that hatch and my eyes acclimated to the night, because we were on the shadowed side of the earth, I started to see the Pacific Ocean and clouds way below me. And all of a sudden I felt very comfortable. I almost felt at home. I had trained for this and it was very inviting. And I went outside the hatch, and now I'm in the void of space all by myself. And I started laughing and I asked Alex, you got to get out here. This is incredible out here. And we went outside, and the very first thing that I had to do when I was outside the International Space Station, this is a little side story, is I had to reach behind me and grab a handrail that was blind behind me. And I had practiced that a number of times in our training facility here in Houston, but I didn't really believe that it would work in space. So I got out and I reached behind me, and right there was the handrail that I had trained for. And that was where it connected, like, all right, the training was valid. I know what I have to go do. I'm going to be successful at this. Spacewalking is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It looks so gentle and peaceful. It is so physically and mentally grueling. It is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Why is it so hard?
You're in a pressure suit, and you're constantly using your hands, whether you're putting tethers down or using a drill or translating around, and just constantly squeezing your hands against this pressure suit over a spacewalk is 7 hours long, 6 to 7 hours long. And over that, you're exhausted. But the thing that I've also realized is your brain is active. There's never a moment of rest. And it's high stakes. You just cannot mess up. It's life or death. And so I think that also exhausts your energy. We don't have food in the suit. All we have is 1 liter of water. And so by the end of it, you're tired, you're hungry.
Okay, next question.
היי ריד, אני אורי משרד. רציתי לשאול אם אי פעם פחדת או נלחצת לפני יציאה לחלל, והאם הייתה לך איזושהי חוויה מלחיצה, אם כן אתה יכול לספר מהי?
Are you ever afraid or nervous in space? And did you ever have a stressful experience on any mission?
There's no way I can sit here and say that I was not afraid. Fear is a very real human emotion. I can talk a little to my personal experience, which I have found leading up to launch. And then I had the same thing going into my first and second spacewalks. And then I felt the same emotion coming home, which was about 3 to 4 days prior to launch. I was very nervous. I didn't want to leave my kids. Everything was getting very sentimental. I was writing letters to people. And then when I went out to the launch pad with Max and Alex, we were very at peace. Our heart rate was low. It was like, this is just the next step in the evolution. And then the whole ride up into space, very little fear. A few things didn't go quite right, and that caused me a bit of a startle. But it was very little fear. Same feeling leading into my first spacewalk. There's a lot of unknowns there. After I went out and did the spacewalk, those unknowns kind of went away, and I started to digest that fear a little bit. So I think it's just like anything you haven't done before in life. The fear of the unknown probably is the fear that is driving you the most. But it's a totally normal reaction, and it was training takes over, and you know what you have to do, and you just go get it done.
Okay, next question.
אני באה מכיתה ו' מהוד השרון, והבנתי שאתה אסטרונאוט יותר מ10 שנים. איך השתנה המסע בחלל שלך במהלך השנים האלו, ואיך אתה חושב שישתנה הקריירה שלך במהלך השנים הקרובות?
You've been an astronaut for some time now. How has space travel changed along these years? And how do you think it will change in the upcoming decades?
The biggest thing that we can see right now, and it's very clear in Israel and across Europe for sure, is the private space industry and the public-private partnership that is going on right now. Our third Axiom mission is now docked to the International Space Station and coming home soon. So when we think about how many more places around the world are getting that access to low Earth orbit, how many private companies are coming online, what SpaceX has done, what Axiom has done, that is where I think the biggest change is. We're still launching on rockets. We're still flying in spacecraft. We're still landing under parachutes. Those sort of fundamental manufacturing of the way we fly has not really been revolutionized, but bringing the world together expanding this discipline to a global effort and now targeting the moon and having the entire world focused on that, to me, that's where the biggest changes have been. And we're reaping the benefits of that right now, for sure.
Let's take another question if we have time.
הרבה אנשים מגישים מעמודיות להיות אסטרונאוטים. מה הכישורים שצריך כדי להיות אסטרונאוט, ולמה דווקא בך בחרו?
You said that in 2009 you were chosen to become an astronaut, but there are a lot of people who want to become an astronaut and hand out their application. What does it take to become an astronaut? Why were you picked above all the rest?
I've served on 2 selection panels since then, and so I've seen the caliber of people that come through an interview. It takes your breath away, and it makes you wonder why you were picked, because you see these people that have really dedicated their lives to some amazing jobs. I think when I look at my own self, I had a good background, a fairly good, solid background. And when I came down here to interview, I really thought 2 primary things, which was, I just want to be a good teammate. And I know I'm not the best at anything. So I need to be able to recognize when someone has the lead or they have the knowledge, and to empower them to succeed at that moment in time. And then if I have the knowledge to succeed in a moment when we're doing a complex task, I have to have the courage to take that leadership. So that was kind of how I came down thinking. But then I also came thinking, you just have to be yourself. So I did not come here pretending to be anybody else than who I was. And if NASA wanted me, great. And if they didn't want me, that's fine. I had a great job back in the US Navy. So that kind of freed me to come down here and just totally be myself. I was as genuine as I could possibly be. And I think in doing 2 additional interview panels, I would say the people who come in here confident in the job that they are in and happy in the life that they're in, it just makes you a happier person in general, and it makes you a better teammate when we're looking at all of these team skills. So if I step back and say, like, what is an astronaut in today's world? You have to be fairly academically capable. You have to have challenged yourself, but then you also just have to be a good teammate and to know how to take care of those around you. You're going to be in a spacecraft for 6 months or a year with 2, 3, 4, 5 other people. And these people, our lives are just completely intertwined, and you have to have total trust. And how you build that, I think, is very important.
One last question.
היי ריד, שמי בר, אני בן 9 מחולון. רציתי לדעת אם אפשר גם ליהנות בחללית. ומה אתם עושים כדי ליהנות ולהירגע חוץ מלעבוד?
How do you also keep it fun on the spacecraft and not work all day long? How do you have fun and relax?
Humans we are amazing creatures. We really are good at, I've noticed traveling the world, we're very good at entertaining ourselves. And if we are left with nothing, we will find a rock or a stick, or we'll find something and start to entertain ourselves. And on the space station on Saturdays and Sundays, that's primarily, honestly, aside from looking out the window, that is what we did. If we had a little miniature soccer ball up there, we would invent games. And so we invented like a floating soccer game where we would have different rules than regular soccer football. And we would just try to put 2 teams on opposite sides of the US laboratory and score goals on each other. Like, we really actually did that stuff. And we would take some of the science experiments that had interesting fluid shifts and dynamics. We would ask if we could play with those on the weekends, and we would play with those. So you just start to pull in your surroundings, and you start to invent games with your crewmates to build kind of team camaraderie. It was amazing how that would work out. And that was really what we did on the weekends to entertain ourselves. But I don't want to overstate that looking out the window, that's the best entertainment in space that you possibly have. Looking back at this beautiful planet that we all live on, that we often take for granted, just being able to look at that, you can spend I think you could spend the rest of your life just looking down at Earth and be entertained.
Makes you kind of realize how the whole Earth is one big spaceship through space.
You very much feel that when you're looking down at Earth with that tiny little atmosphere and the black of space, just like the image behind me. You really feel like we are all on a spaceship floating through the solar system for sure.
Reid Wijsman, Thank you so much. I want to thank you for your time and effort to meet us. We'll keep following you to the moon and send you a big wave when you get there.
Please do. I love sharing this message. It really is one of global cooperation, and I appreciate being here today. Thank you.
תודה רבה לאסטרונאוט ריד ווייזמן על הרצאה מרתקת, ועל הזמן שהקדיש לנו גם למענה לשאלות. באמת מדהים שזאת העבודה של האיש המעניין והמקסים הזה, להתכונן לכל ההיבטים של מסע אל הירח. ריד באמת הולך לעשות היסטוריה, וחייב להגיד שאותי אישית מאוד ריגש לדבר איתו. אני מקווה שנהנתם בהרצאה היום במסגרת שבוע החלל הישראלי, ואני מזמין אתכם להיכנס לאתר סוכנות החלל הישראלית ולראות את כל שאר האירועים והפעילויות שמתקיימים במסגרת השבוע הזה. ירידי החלל, תצפיות במצפה הכוכבים, כנסים, הרצאות ועוד. בואו, נתראה בשבוע החלל.